My name is Tanya Curry, and this is the annual review of 2022 with Acumen Media. It's entitled One Step Beyond, Madness, a Year in SA. Well done, tenacious one. You've been reading Scratch the Surface for another year, but 2022 wasn't for the faint-hearted, and, seeing as you're here, saddle up and let's take one step beyond and look back in anger on the first half of the year. It was no football match, but it was a real kick around. Let's scratch the surface of 2022 with Acumen Media and relive the madness we experienced from January to June this year. It actually begins with Lindiwe Sisulu calling our judiciary the N-word, House N. Remember that? Our Medusa Sisulu has been dominating headlines all year. She actually did the kickoff by taking one step beyond. Sisulu, anti-everything except Zuma's RET, is in the race for presidency. Well, actually, it takes two in 2022. Her and Nkosazana, when people zol, Dlamini still Zuma.
When people zol, they put...
Lindiwe has been seen rallying behind asbestos, Magashule, and loathes that step-aside rule. Well, I say loathes. What I mean is, it depends on who the target is, because we've seen this woman challenge the Constitution and demean our judiciary throughout the year.
So you can keep your flea-infested body at peace and sit down.
Ramaphosa wasn't having it. They're not mates, those two. Not while he was calling the Constitution the most beautiful Constitution in the world. The prayers also blamed Cabinet for the July riots and fired Khaya Sithole. Words like insurrection or coup d'etat left our narrative, but riots remained. Even though there were slow-moving wheels of justice, our president's Tumamina and New Dawn speeches dried up, and he turned to using the F word, then replaced it with a redundant fear nix.
I fear Foko.
Even the great orator took 2022 one step beyond. Just madness. This was all before his couch was left gutted like our house in the middle of the street. Before the couch, he had spent most of the year keeping his job. The RET have tried to unseat him, if you will, all year. I can hear your eyes roll back from here. Show some compassion, won't you? Okay, don't. You're right. He signed up for this. Leaked audio where the president was recorded saying that he would rather fall on his sword than for the public to finally hear that public money was being used to advance certain campaigns was a big story. 2022 was littered with South Africanisms, words with double meanings, and a huge media budget. Leaked is one of those words. It means published. One step beyond. Before Paul Mashatile even entered the conversation, we saw Zweli I've Got Vibes Mkhize drop his hat in the ring for the presidential race. Are you noticing a trend? Yep. That's what we do for a living here at Acumen, identify trends. And while we were jaw-dropping over Mkhize's gall, we learned that 2/3 of all PPE tender awards were irregular. Yet another South Africanism. Irregular equals stolen. Stolen from the sick, stolen by thieves. Ensfa Sibongile, who went Kardashian with money that didn't belong to her, was immediately labeled a thief and handed a 5-year sentence for taking advantage of an irregular error. Fair cop, though. If you're one of the big fish, though, then let's think, for example, KPMG, McKinsey, Steinhoff, Zuma, VBEPS, Lutas, Zweli Mkhize, Bosasa, Guptas, then we call it irregular. Just madness. And one step beyond. Have you picked up your jaw yet? Allow me to drop it for you. South Africa's Guy Fawkes, Andile Mafe. Remember him? The homeless guy who blew up Parliament with explosives he magically pulled out of a Checkers bag. Parley had no security, no cameras, and no insurance. Well, our Guy Fawkes also called for Yanis Wallace, the assassinator of Chris Hani, to be released. You've noticed that trend now, haven't you? It's one step beyond. Time for another word of the year. Not that rubbish goblin mode. A word named Word of the Year in the Oxford Dictionary. Goblin mode is 2 words. Duh. And what does it even mean? Here's a word that absolutely must be added to our South Africanisms. Stalingrad. A dangerous and expensive word. and one that Dali Mpofu spells very well. Enter one of the biggest stories of the year, the unseating of the so-called public protector. I prefer to call her the public neglector. No other than Busisiwe Madam Makwabane. The woman terrifies the daylights out of me. Seriously, she could be an Eskom. She walks in and all the daylights leave me. It is through her, not through you, Chair, that Stalingrad came into its own. It's like a mandate to Mpofu. It means stall the court or inquiry process by all means possible. A tactic successfully deployed by Obaba for 9 years. Sidebar. He's now being represented by Barry Roo. Yeah, I know. One step beyond. Anyway, back to Dali and Madame Bussy. They've spent more time together than most couples. It must be love. Sweet love. Nah, it's not. It's willing buyer, willing seller, and that's all, I'm afraid. Dali has been called out by most. I mean, even Adrian Masson called him a nincompoop. Dali was found breaching the code of legal ethics by telling a colleague to shut up. He was threatened with disbarment for other outrageous one-step-beyond moves, but he owns Stalingrad. He's a master at it. He just moved from one political RET-biased criminal to another. Stalingrad. Put that working word in your dictionary, not goblin mode. Zuma, you'll learn, even though terminally ill, has danced, opened restaurants and volunteered as a potential witness for Makwebane's impeachment process. He knows all about Stalingrad. He's been using Billy Downer as his latest delay tactic in the arms deal trial. Simply infuriating and madness. Let's assume that Eskom has been absent from this report, and for the most part they have, unless you talk about the bombings of our infrastructure. Anyone? No, of course not. That will remind us that we're still having an insurrection and no one wants to report on that game. Media silence and media manipulation were dotted across sets of statistics across the year. They've always been there. It's just become more blatant. One step beyond, if you will. Early this year, we saw Nhlanhla Lux, what a character. One step beyond the man we associated with Jabulani Mall during the insurrection. He was named a toy soldier by Malema. Why? Well, Lux now headed up a terrifying campaign called Operation Dudula. Later in our report, Malema asks him to be police commissioner. Just madness. Operation Dudula, another South Africanism. Just call it what it is, xenophobia. But that unfolds into a much bigger story, one really harrowing as we traipse through the broken pieces of 2022. Operation Dudula came into its own in Diepsloot, a place so dangerous that the police won't even drive through it. A place in which Nhlanhla Lux took front and center, beautifully branded, him and his crew, T-shirts and placards, and so the marketing of Operation Dudula began. It caused chaos. We became wide-eyed, but unprepared for what was about to come. 2022, we see you, madness, and definitely one step beyond. And then the Senzo Mayiwe trial, the murder of a football star. Netflix dropped a docu, and suddenly the wheels of justice started to grind. Docu justice, a South Africanism, and my personal favorite. Overseas, Ukraine was under attack. That started to trend. Putin wreaked havoc. Zelensky received an Oscar. Zelensky effect, apparently. That's new words. Former Prince Andrew paid Gufrem millions of pounds to forget she was raped as a child. One step so beyond. Would you believe that this was only all in quarter one? Stay with me because it gets wild from here. Quarter two began with a look beyond and over the sea, where Will Smith clapped Chris Rock and Kim Kardashian tore Marilyn's dress. The world fell in love again with Johnny Depp. And we shared a multiple loathing for Amber Turd. And that, my friends, was court TV at its finest. Bringing it home, Black Coffee brought home lots of those shiny Grammy statues. That was one of the best things of 2022. Step away from the madness and the couch. And then it happened, one of the biggest and most tragic stories of the year. KZN floods. Media reported the death toll at over 400 and then they stopped counting. Nobody knows how many people died, but what we do know is that there are still 6,000 survivors and they have become victims of a cruel South Africa. 6,000 people are sleeping in buses as the government bungles 23 tenders that juggle with human rights. They will be sleeping in that bus tonight and no one will care. Talking about things we don't care about, The GBV statistics came out and 76% of men admitted to being guilty of GBV in one way or another. Admitted. Skip ahead to Q4 and our crime stats look like wartime stats. World War on women. And then here we go. Are you ready for the madness? Farmgate. Cupcake was told to step down, step aside, step to the left, slide to the right, and we were doing the Rocky Horror Picture Show, taking one step beyond as we started to look sideways and use scary words like President Double D. Here it became clear as to why Ramaphosa had fired Makubane. Now you see it. The madness started with a faulty prop, a couch. It was Julius who initially led the narrative. He said Rama staged a robbery at his own farm to launder cash by having it stolen as it was hidden in his couch. Juju dropped a video recording of two creeps breaking into a house. Sounds like another day in SA to me, but now today in Q4, we have a commission all wrapped up and a case for the president to answer for. A case that has our heads spinning like a mad merry-go-round, trying to work out if we have a president or not. We learned later that said video was leaked by no other than Arthur Fraser. Fraser is a wannabe Zoomer. He released Ubaba on medical parole as he was terminally ill. I use was. And as Cupcake has now taken a swipe at Madame Makubane, the battle lines were drawn in the sand. The video was an edited version, and we should remember that. Fraser knew all about this hot couch because he was the head of the SSA at the time of the robbery, where the president reported it. Fraser didn't bother with it because it didn't involve magical sick notes. He was only interested when you're charged over 700 times. Fraser only enters the fray when there are sick notes, not for gutted couches. In fact, our house in the middle of the street doesn't count beneath his feet. Sick notes and gutted couches. Great South Africanisms. Nomia Rosemary and Ndlovu, what a piece of work. Convicted serial killer. She cut a chilling figure in the courtroom, didn't she? Absolutely terrifying. Court TV was busy. Malema and Mama Winnie's funeral case was such a farce. Why did we even bother? I'd have pushed anyone aside to get to a family funeral. This was just a diversion excursion, a bit like that Tembisa 10 docu-series that was entered into the Global Journalism Awards. Oh, no, it wasn't. Oh, yes, it was. Oh, no, it wasn't, actually. Regardless, Nando made a meal of it. Ekurhuleni 11, the deceptive decuplets. Then entered Eskom. Well, exited Eskom. Definitely the nominee for Drama Queen of the Year. We had all of the stages, 5, 6, 7, 8, rubbish, so that we'd forget about the insurrection that was alive and well on the ground, disseminating our infrastructure like a virus, leaving only devastation, gobbling up our country's wallet and our ability to trade and our ability to eat. These maniacs should be tried for treason. We see you 2022. Gauteng was and is in darkness from 10 to 12 hours a day. Well, when I said it was wild, it was also very dark, a Tim Burton kind of dark. Or madness, just one step beyond. You still reading? Listening? Gets worse. Whistleblower Hillary Gardy shot and killed execution style, dead next to her 3-year-old. This time we had had enough. South Africa will not let this story leave. We will not let her life just lie there as politics step on her remains. Murder most foul, and certainly one step beyond. So, what were our opposition doing while all this was carrying on like a bad telenovela? Well, Zilla said it was better to be poor in Langa than in the rest of the country, and Steenhuisen went to Ukraine. Why? His explanation? Cooking oil has become expensive in South Africa. I'd like to see the same level of interest when a woman is raped, stabbed, and drags her naked self to a taxi rank for someone to save her life. But that is far too much to expect. In fact, it's one step beyond. Dear John, nothing but a Botox advert. There is an undercurrent of good, though. Siyavuma. Maya became the DCJ. Dudu Myeni was issued with an arrest warrant. Anuj Singh and Brian Molefe were actually put in handcuffs. There was some drama about a 22 million rand flag. We didn't quite get that bit. But we did do a lot about flags this quarter, like AfriForum and EFF having a ridiculous legal ruckus about the apartheid flag. The government reintroduced the 350 Rand grant and the nation breathed. My dear country, what has become of you? What trauma have you endured? One step beyond. Then watershedding, a new South Africanism, and madness. It was also in Q2, getting sick of you, where we saw that ridiculous character advocate Tefo get arrested in the middle of giving his legal argument at the Miyiwe trial. Tefo was handcuffed in the courtroom and walked out without finishing his closing sentence to the court. We thought that was the weird part. Not a chance, Chana. That oak called press conferences. Lots of them. We'll deal with him in Q3. Stick with me. The next part is coming up shortly. As I sign off the first half of this terrible match, let me remind you of a story you've all forgotten. The Guptas were arrested. Oh, and our trolley surfer made it home safe. Madness, and so very South Africanistic. There was huge news in this half of the year. Acumen Media launched its active listening service, and that is a game changer. Some might say it's one step beyond. I'm Tonya Curry, and I'll be back with the final part of what you've endured in 2022. Don't worry, we'll only just scratch the surface.